Humpty Dumpty, how he fell with a roll and a rumble, and fell off like a doll of a crumple by the...
Welcome to the inaugural episode of James Joyce's divine and delirious comedy, Finnegans Wake. Published on the 4th of May 1939, Joyce's last novel celebrates its 85th anniversary today, the 4th of May 2024. So May the 4th is not just for Star Wars. In any case, may the 4th be with you. I'm Adam Seelig, the director of the readings you'll soon hear performed by Irish-Canadian actor and my good friend and colleague Richard Hart. Finnegans Wake is a production of One Little Goat Theatre Company. For the next 5 years, One Little Goat will film and record all 17 chapters, roughly 30 hours, of Joyce's Finnegans Wake before live audiences in various locations, screening and releasing them along the way with the aim of completing the entire book in time for its 90th birthday, May the 4th of 2029. One Little Goat Theatre Company is an official charity in Canada and the United States. If you'd like to support our work, please visit us online at www.onelittlegoat.org to make a charitable donation. And if monetary support is not an option, you can still help this podcast by rating and reviewing it and by spreading the word. To get in touch, you'll find our email address on the One Little Goat Theatre Company website, and we'd love to hear from you. 20 years ago, I opened Finnegans Wake, read 10 pages, and put it back on the shelf, utterly bewildered. Then early in the pandemic, during one of Toronto's several lockdowns, Jordy Kaufman, who teaches at George Brown College, invited me to read Finnegans Wake with him and his colleague Thomas Panaya. I told Jordy, "You do know that it's essentially impossible to read this book, right?" But he was undeterred, and at our first meeting via Zoom, as we took turns reading from the first page of the novel, I found it, and perhaps this was the result of so much isolation, I found it bringing a whole world to me. From the first word on that page, River Run, Joyce's text felt so expansive at a time when my own world had contracted. And it was lyrical, it was strange, it was funny, and it was smart as all hell, and it was communal. It was great to be reading it as a group. What was missing, though, was someone who really knew Ireland, and Dublin in particular, given the Wake's boundless references to Joyce's native city. So I invited two friends who fit the bill, Kathy Murphy and Richard Hart, the latter of whom was born and raised in Dublin. And at our next meeting, when Richard took his turn to read, his delivery was so dynamic and free-flowing and funny. We all thought he'd read this book before. He hadn't, but in a way it's as if he'd been training for nearly a quarter century, because Richard's been reading and performing Joyce's Ulysses annually for over 20 years with Toronto's Bloomsday Group and Olivia Productions. As we continued to meet weekly, it became clear that the rest of us preferred hearing Richard read from the novel than hear ourselves stumble through the famously difficult text, because Richard speaks fluent Joyce, fluid Wake. And I was convinced then, as I am today, that he's one of the people on planet Earth to read this novel, and I promise you that's not hyperbole. So I made a plan to record Richard's renditions of the text. Initially, I thought we'd do it as an audiobook or podcast, but because Richard and I have done a lot of work together in the theater and we love the live moment, the idea of going into an isolated studio after so much social isolation was not particularly appealing. Plus, reading Finnegans Wake without the reading group or an audience present would lose a sense of comedy. There's a reason stand-up comedians do live albums with live audiences, and that's how we ended up turning to film. Film has enabled us to capture Richard's reading for a live audience and give us that feeling of being in the room with him, as does the audio from the films, which comprise our podcast episodes. Chapter 1 was shot and recorded in 2022 in my home in Toronto with a small, and at the time, all-masked audience. It premiered at the Toronto Irish Film Festival, European Union Film Festival, and Bloomsday Film Festival at the James Joyce Centre in Dublin. What is Finnegans Wake about? Well, Finnegans Wake is a different kind of book that requires a different kind of question. I can't say what it's about, but rather what it is. For Samuel Beckett, Joyce's younger friend and admirer, and the minimalist to Joyce's maximalist, the Wake, quote, is not to be read, or rather it is not only to be read, it is to be looked at and listened to. Joyce's writing, Beckett insists, and I quote again, is not about something, it is that something itself. Okay then, so what is Finnegans Wake? Let's start with the title. Finnegans Wake takes its name from a comedic 19th century Irish-American folk song that goes something like this. Tim Finnegan goes to work a little bit drunk, climbs up a ladder, and falls down to his death. At his wake, a bar fight breaks out, and when someone chucks a bottle of whiskey across the room, it misses the intended target, scatters over Tim's body laid out in the coffin, and before you know it, Tim has revived. He's risen from the dead. Joyce, in his singular ability to read something into everything, saw in this folk song nothing less than an allegory for the rise and fall and rise again of humankind. And this is a major theme of the novel. So Joyce took the song title and removed the apostrophe in Finnegans, which does at least two things. One, it makes Finnegan plural, so this is a novel involving many Finnegans. Finnegan's singular is a kind of everyman. Finnegan's plural are a kind of everyone. And two, it transforms the wake of the folk song title, that is an Irish wake celebrating the life of the deceased. It transforms it into a verb. Now we have Finnegans in the plural awakening. So one gloss on Joyce's title, Finnegan's sans apostrophe, Finnegans Wake, could be everyone wake up and down and up again. That cycle of rising and falling and rising again is a key to Finnegans Wake. So, as a way into Joyce's extraordinary bananas novel and as a way to kick off chapter 1, I invited Irish-Canadian folk singer Kevin Kennedy to perform the Finnegans Wake folk song for a live audience before Richard started his reading. Kevin Kennedy is a gem. He was born in Ireland in Westport, County Mayo, and moved to Canada in 1968. He's performed for decades across Eastern Canada and the United States, and like Richard Hart, he's also part of Toronto's Anne Olivia Productions, who performed Joyce's Ulysses Every Bloomsday, June 16th. He's recorded over 700 Irish folk songs, viewed and heard over 100,000 times on his YouTube channel, Kevin Kennedy Irish. Okay, so it's time to welcome Kevin and you into my home for Kevin's terrific rendition of the 19th century Irish-American folk song, Finnegans Wake.
Tim Finnegan lived in Watling Street, a gentleman Irish mighty odd. He had a beautiful brogue, both rich and sweet, and to rise in the world he carried a hod. Now Tim had a sort of a tippling way, with a love for the liquor poor Tim was born. And to help him on with his work each day, he'd a drop of the crater every morn. Back for the van out, dance your partner, well the floor your trousers shake. Wasn't it the truth? I told you lots of fun at Finnegans Wake. One morning Tim felt rather full. His head felt heavy and it made him shake. He fell from the ladder and he broke his skull, and they carried him home, his corpse to wake. They wrapped him up in a nice clean sheet, and they laid him out upon the bed, with a barrel of porter at his feet, and a gallon of whiskey at his head. Waxed full the dan out, dance your partner, welt the floor your trousers shake. Wasn't it the truth? I told you lots of fun at Finnegans Wake. His friends assembled at the wake, and Mrs. Finnegan called for lunch. First they brought in tea and cake, then pipes, tobacco and brandy punch. Biddy O'Brien began to cry, such a nice clean corpse did you ever see? And a Tim of Orneen, why did you die? Or a hold your gob, says Maggie McGee. Whack for the dan out, dance your partner, welt the floor your trousers shake. Wasn't it the truth? I told you lots of fun at Finnegans Wake. Then Maggie O'Connor took up the job. Biddy, says she, you're wrong, I'm sure. Biddy gave her a belt in the gob and left her sprawling on the floor. It was then the war did all engage, woman to woman and man to man. Shillelagh law was all the rage, and a row and eruption soon began. Back for the dado, dance your partner, welt the floor, your trousers shake. Wasn't it the truth? I told you lots of fun at Finnegans Wake. Then Mickey Maloney ducked his head when a flagon of whiskey flew at him. It missed and landed on the bed. The liquor scattered over Tim. Bedad, he revives, see how he rises. The bold Timothy rising in the bed, saying, whirl your liquor around like blazes. By the thunder and Jesus, do you think I'm dead? Back for the dano, dance your partner, welt the floor, your trousers shake. Wasn't it the truth? I told you lots of fun at Finnegans Wake. Back for the dano, dance your partner, welt the floor, your trousers shake. Wasn't it the truth? I told you lots of fun at Finnegans Wake. Back for the dano, dance your partner, welt the floor, your trousers shake. Wasn't it the truth? I told you lots of fun at Finnegans Wake.
That was the wonderful Kevin Kennedy performing the Irish-American folk song Finnegans Wake, filmed and recorded live in Toronto on August 31st, 2022. Join us for episode 2 in a fortnight when Richard Hart begins his reading of Joyce's legendary novel Finnegans Wake. To be sure you don't miss the episode, why not subscribe to this podcast? And for more on One Little Goat's Finnegans Wake project, including liner notes and trailers for the films, visit our website at onelittlegoat.org. Finnegans Wake is made possible by friends of One Little Goat Theatre Company and the Emigrant Support Programme of the Government of Ireland. Thank you for your support. And thank you to the artists for this episode. Kevin Kennedy, sound by William Bembridge, podcast production by Sean Rasmussen, stage management by Laura Lakatosh, rehearsal stage management by Sandy Becker, directed by yours truly, Adam Seelig. Thanks to our live audience of Pip Dwyer, Kathy Murphy, Nomi Rotbard, Arlo Rotbard-Seelig, and thanks to our rehearsal audience of Jackie Chow, Jordy Kaufman, Andrew Moody, and Shai Rotbard-Seelig. Thank you to the Embassy of Ireland in Ottawa and the Irish Consulate in Toronto, and to the production consultants Kathy Murphy and Andrew Moody. One Little Goat Theatre Company is a not-for-profit, artist-driven, registered charity. To find out more and to join our mailing list, please visit onelittlegoat.org. Thank you for listening.